So what is that phrase? Be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, or anger if we're using modern language. What does that really mean? Does it pertain to something a little more distinctive than the way we normally use it? Let's look at that in James 1:19. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian, a project simply about what it means to have a relationship with God, how to live that out in practical everyday terms, and how to hold myself and for us to hold each other accountable as well. So I'm going to try to give you the distinct context of what James meant here, as well as try not to move that direction because I have a tendency so far to move this way, and I'm trying to stay here and be good. James chapter 1, verses 18 through 21 is where I'm going to read here in just a moment, but I want to give you a summation, if you will, of the type of audience that James was writing to. Wes McAdams penned this, and I think it's brilliant. I never really thought about the audience like this, but when you think about the whole letter, the book that he wrote, that James wrote here, it makes sense that these people are probably just like he describes. Wes McAdams says the following: James seems to be writing to the kind of Christians who think very highly of themselves, the kind of people who consider themselves to be wise, religious, and capable teachers. They are critical and judgmental. They want to live comfortable lives. They envy wealth and they scorn poverty. They believe themselves to have a lot of faith and a lot of wisdom, but what they really have is a lot of words. Now that's your audience. Now you're going to write to an audience like that that's arrogant, for lack of a better way to put it. And you're going to tell them that they need to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Did he have something specific in mind? I think it will help you and I as we deal with our growth in the Lord. So let's read here. James chapter 1, beginning in verse 18. Of his own will, God's own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. The important concept here is mentioned in verse 18 and verse 21. That is the word of truth. Look what it's done once again. In verse 18, it has brought us forth. We are who we are. We are Christians because of this word of truth. We had to admit sin. That's confession. We had to start that somewhere. We had to agree that we were wrong, that this was right, and that this is the source of truth, and God is the source of truth. And that's been what has borne us into this kind of first fruits of his creatures, the best of his creatures. What he wants for everybody. It doesn't mean we're better than everybody else. It just means we are what he designed us to be and what he wants the whole world to be. And it came through here. So truth is paramount. Not how I feel, not what I like or dislike or what I think. Truth is paramount. Let's go to verse 21 once again. He says, therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness. You got to do that in order to even receive the truth. Otherwise, this thing doesn't make any difference to you and you don't care about it. So put that away and receive with meekness. Receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. And that saving is continual. It's not like we were just saved over here one time and then later on and we just continue to be saved. It is a continual process, kind of like in 1 John chapter 1, not exactly like 1 John chapter 1, where it says in verse 7, if we walk in the light, it would literally be translated, if we walk and keep on walking, the blood of Jesus, his son, will cleanse us and keep on cleansing us. So this word is continually able to save our souls. And how should I receive that? Always with meekness, with this humility, with this, what's the definition here? With this mildness of spirit. I want to know the truth. Sometimes people give me the truth in a way that I don't want to hear it. Sometimes people are mean about it. Sometimes people give me a truth that I don't want to know about. And so I react in a certain way. And my wife can tell you this. She'll tell me flat out that I'm wrong about something. And she knows my tendency to respond is by talking before she can ever finish her statement, by responding and justifying myself and then getting angry about it. I've always told my kids, or since they were able to at least understand the concept, I told my kids, when you're talking to somebody, the first person to get angry loses. When you're trying to reason with somebody or argue with somebody or disagree with somebody. The first one to get angry loses because you lose your head. That's why he said the following. Look again. The anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Some people, especially in the South, have said, well, it's just a sin to ever be angry. No, it's not. Then Jesus would have been a sinner. He sat down in such an anger that he fashioned the whip before he drove a bunch of people, the money changers, out of the temple. But this kind of anger, where I can't hear anymore, where I won't listen, this is why we don't get along in our country anymore. And it's not like it's all bad. That's not what I mean. But this is why we struggle to get along in our country, is because we're terrible at listening. It's the same reason why people can't be good salesmen, because they want to talk the whole time. They want to get their point across instead of listening. That kind of anger, when someone won't just agree with you or let it go, doesn't produce the righteousness of God. It produces selfishness. So, continuing on here, back to this, he says, let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. And he calls them brethren. And he's trying to get this point across. Listen to me. And he calls them brethren. I want you to get this. And he's got a lot of things to say to them that are not fun to hear. A lot of James's corrective. One guy said it was like you could say James was shut up and do it. So he's saying some things that are not going to be comfortable to hear. And he's trying to set the tone and the attitude. Hear me. Don't just start talking. Don't just start reacting. And don't get so angry that you can't hear anymore and that you're not willing to change. One of the most dangerous types of Christians that exist is the one who thinks they have it figured out, because they ain't going to learn nothing else. And no matter what you bring to them, they've had it figured out for years and years and years. There's no way they could be wrong about it. And that's the opposite of being open-minded and noble in Acts chapter 17 when you're reading about the Bereans there. So don't be so quick don't be like me when my wife tells me I'm wrong. Don't be so quick to respond and to get angry. Remember, though, it takes time for the truth to set in. It takes time. It's not like people just say, oh, I was just flat wrong. Okay, most of us don't do that. We're told we're doing something wrong at the job. We want to give excuses as to why we did it wrong or explain why it's somebody else's fault. It takes time for the truth to set in. And so during that time, be slow to speak. There is a time to speak. There is a time to get angry. But when we're being corrected, we should receive it. And when the truth is paramount, receive it in this way with this meekness. In other words, how it will help you today, don't be so defensive. Somebody disagrees with you on social media. Heaven forbid. Somebody disagrees with you and you got to come right back. If somebody disagrees with you, if somebody corrects you, don't be so defensive. Calm down, listen first, then speak, and maybe there'll be a time for anger later. I hope that helps you within the context to see why these admonitions from James are so important. I want to thank you for being with us today. If you're watching on YouTube, I hope this helped you. Thank you for being here. If you haven't subscribed already, you can hit this button, hit the notification bell to keep up with all future releases. And please like the video if it helped you. More importantly, share it with somebody else. If you want to see what we released last time or what YouTube recommends, those videos are over here. For our podcast listeners, thank you so much for being with us. Please subscribe, rate, and review us. Help get the word out. And I'm asking once again for everybody to share this with somebody else.